during the Maidan revolution in eastern Ukraine and in other parts, there was also kind of an anti-Maidan movement. And in this revolutionary atmosphere, there's sort of a counter-revolution that's going on, especially in eastern Ukraine. And so these folks who are kind of pro-Russian, anti-EU, anti what's happening in Kiev, they see the annexation of Crimea and they think the Russian government won't be far behind to support them as well. But the Kremlin didn't really have that much interest at that time in annexing territory beyond Crimea. The Black Sea Fleet was there, as you know, that was of particular importance to them. Crimea was kind of historically an important vacation spot that a lot of Russians remember fondly. And so there was sort of this kind of nationalist, patriotic surge around Crimea, but no one cared about Donbass, this coal, producing region in eastern Ukraine, where all of these kind of now separatists are rising up against the Ukrainian state. But Putin faced a dilemma. In 2012, 2 years before the annexation of Crimea, there were just kind of mass protests against him returning to presidency after, as we were talking about, Dmitry Medvedev, kind of the more liberal kind of stand-in. And among those, the people who particularly were threatening to Putin were the Russian nationalists, the guys on the right who were opposed to him returning, and kind of less so the liberals, guys like Alex Navalny, who you might know. These guys were considered the threat. And so over the course of the next 2 years, Putin was working to kind of co-opt the Russian nationalist movement himself, right, to become sort of the embodiment of it, while prosecuting and persecuting the Russian nationalists who were opposed to his rule. And so all of a sudden, this issue in Donbass creates a big problem for him, because you have these pro-Russian separatists calling for Russia's help. They don't want to annex the territory because they don't want to face any more sanctions and international isolation. So how can they can't, nor can Putin be seen basically as like leaving these guys out to dry. And so they turn to kind of this mixture of letting through these Russian militant volunteers and turning to these mercenaries. And one of the groups that they turn to are the guys from Slavonic Corps, the leaders of whom were just arrested for mercenarism. And one of the commanders within Slavonic Corps was a guy, Dmitry Utkin, an ex-GRU commander who went on to work for Moran Company. And he was linked up with kind of the financial sponsor, who was a guy, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who we can go into.
Yes.
But Prigozhin is a very kind of colorful, larger-than-life figure, a guy who was an ex-con, kind of a thug as a kid growing up in Soviet Russia. He comes out of prison as the Soviet Union is falling apart, and joins with a couple gangsters, kind of the supermarket business, and then he claims he's selling hot dogs, and he eventually starts up these two restaurants in St. Petersburg, very much catered to the Russian nouveau riche, selling, caviar, whatever like new money can buy, like the most kind of ostentatious type of meals. And it so happened that a young Vladimir Putin was also a client and took a liking to Prigozhin, and he managed to leverage that restaurant business and connections with the Russian elite to contracting to provide meals to the Russian military and Russian schools. And this is a big chance to make serious off the books money too, as you can imagine, from state budgets and how much you're actually providing. And so he was already doing very well. He already had these connections with the military. And so he links up with Dmitry Utkin as sort of the sponsor and the political backer of this mercenary force that is then deployed to support the separatists in Donbass in 2014.
Wow. I think before that, does he provide meals, serve Putin and George Bush and the wives somewhere?
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, and so kind of famously too, especially during the restaurant days, when George Bush came to visit St. Petersburg, and I think twice, the catering was provided by Prigozhin, and so there's all of these photos of George Bush being served kind of a steak by Prigozhin himself. And so it's just, it's a wild trajectory that it took.
If you enjoyed that clip, watch the full episode here or another clip here.